Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Carolina Panthers, and this offseason is going to be awesome. I fully anticipate it. The NFC South is completely wide open. There was a video that dropped a couple of days ago. It was like this montage of that Carolina game for Tampa Bay, and it was just so down and desperate. And you got to feel for Tom Brady because he is the GOAT, but I have a feeling even if Tom comes back, this division is completely wide open as we saw this season. Now, I want to say this statement right here, right now. You're going up against the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. I get it, he's old and he's at the tail end of his career. But this Carolina Panthers team started 2-7. And if I had told you when the Panthers were 2-7, like 5 years ago, if I said, hey, look, 5 years from now, the Panthers will be 2-7, Tom Brady's in your division, and come the second to last week of the season, week 17, the winner of that game, Carolina or Tampa Bay, they make it into the playoffs and have a home playoff game. You'd be like, that doesn't even really make sense. I can't even really comprehend that because it just doesn't make sense to me. Well, that's exactly what happened. Carolina started the season 2-7. They finished 7-10. Now, the statistics aren't perfect. The final record isn't perfect. It's not pretty. It's not sexy. It's nothing. But they were 6 points away. They were a touchdown away from making it into the playoffs. And for a team that went through the firing of a head coach, getting rid of arguably your best player on your entire roster, let alone your offense, you had Baker Mayfield start off the season for you. You had PJ Walker play 6 games for you. And you finished the season with Sam Darnold. It genuinely sounds crazy. Now, Steve Wilkes did a phenomenal job. He did an absolute phenomenal job, and I want to go back to this tweet from Mike K earlier today. But before we do, guys, if you enjoy it, hit the like button, hit that sub button. It is officially the offseason. I post daily NFL content. I've been posting a lot more Panthers videos, but now that we're in the playoffs, now that the playoffs are kind of coming to a close, I'm definitely going to start posting at least a couple of times a week for the Panthers. So if we could get this video to 100 likes, that would be absolutely awesome. And obviously, let me know what you guys think of the video and of the Panthers down below at the end of the video. Now, here's the tweet from Mike K. With the coaching search, it's easy to say why you would go after a young offensive coordinator. Most owners would love to find a guy who could last 10 years and bring long-term success, i.e. guys like Kyle Shanahan, etc., etc. And he finishes this tweet off by saying, I think the Panthers have a unique situation where finding a guy who could be a 5-year fix is logical. And I saw earlier today a poll, and it was like, do you want the offensive coordinator from the Eagles, or do you want former head coach of the Saints, Sean Payton, or do you want Steve Wilkes? And it was not even close. Steve Wilkes won it. And I think, at the very least, even if it doesn't work out, I think he 100% deserves a chance. Once again, now, take statistics with a grain of salt, but seriously, guys, this team, I mean, they were 1-5, they were 2-7, they were 3-8. Like, they had a shot 2 weeks before the final week of the season to have a home playoff game if they won. It's crazy. This division is so wide open, regardless if TB12 is there or not. The Saints are suffering, the Falcons are suffering, and Carolina, the way they ended the season, has me feeling really excited. And what really pissed me off was, actually before we get into that, I saw a tweet earlier today, an article earlier today, that the Panthers are focused on experienced head coaches for opening. I have this weird gut feeling that Carolina isn't going to go with Coach Wilkes and they're going to go in a different direction, and I'm open to the idea and I really hope it works out, but I genuinely think Coach Steve is the man for the job. And reportedly, the Falcons are monitoring the situation between Carolina and Steve. And it just seems so storybook for Steve Wilkes if he was to not come back after being the interim head coach for Carolina, goes to Atlanta, they win the division, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just a shot in the leg, man. I would not be a fan of that if it happened. And I really hope Coach Steve is back. Now, Carolina has the 9th pick in the draft. There's some holes regardless of who the head coach is that you need to fill. And if we take a look at like offense and defense, both of it, offense was ranked 19th, defense was ranked 20th. They're both bottom third of the NFL. However, the defense is one of the youngest, most talented squads in the league, in my opinion. And I know that might sound like a hot take, but there are definitely some holes that need to be filled. And it's going to start at the QB position. Going from Baker to PJ to Darnold, and Darnold being the best of them is, I don't even have words to describe it. It's inconceivable. It's wild. But there was a reason Sam Darnold was drafted so high. So I have a proposition for Panthers fans, and I want to hear from you guys down below. All right. Sam Darnold will be a free agent. So what if you bring him back for one more year on like a kind of gamble year, like you're our starting quarterback, let's see what you got. Or you bring in a guy like Jimmy G, who just got injured for the season. He was having a really good year for him, a career year. You bring in Jimmy G on a one-year deal, a prove-it deal for both of them. Don't want to bring both of them, like either or. Sam Darnold or a guy like Jimmy G, a veteran who can help you win. You put in a ton of money on the defense, specifically the linebacker position. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then with draft pick number 9 in the first round, you can get a guy like Anthony Richardson. And you let him go behind, Jimmy or Sam Darnold or whoever you decide to go with, because Anthony Richardson is an extremely raw prospect. He's a Florida Gator. You have a top 10 pick. He has, to me, the highest upside of quarterbacks. Now, I just moved to Florida, and I've seen Anthony Richardson play live football, but I'm a Chicago boy. I don't have this personal affiliation to Anthony Richardson. I genuinely just think if he can get his footwork down, if he can take that next step with passing the football, the league is going to be pissed off that they didn't take him. Every team in the league. Every team in the league, 1 through 8, is going to be like, why didn't we take him? It was clear as day. So he had a 53.8% completion percentage last year at Florida, which isn't great, right? But it's good for Carolina because he's not going to be the number 1 draft pick. He had about 2,600 total throwing yards, 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But the X factor, his secret weapon, it's not a secret actually, is his legs. He ran for 654 yards, and he had 9 rushing touchdowns. So it might be worth a gamble, and I just want to hear from Panthers fans what you guys think about that. Yeah, maybe if, Derek Carr, they're not going to release Derek Carr, so I'm not actually even going to entertain that. Now, there are 2 other holes that you really want to focus on with Carolina, and it's going to start on that linebacker position, just more specifically a pass rusher, because Brian Burns just had a phenomenal season. The former first-round pick, another Pro Bowler. Outside of Brian Burns, you had Frankie Louvu, who was good at rushing the passer. Brian Burns had a phenomenal season, though. He had 12 sacks. Pro Bowl appearance. Guy was a stud. And like I said, you do have Frankie Louvu there at the linebacker position. He had 7 sacks. Brian Burns had 12.5. But outside of that, there wasn't too much pass rush. And like I said, there are some really enticing players on this team. You got guys like Shaq Thompson, who had 135 tackles. You got newcomer studs like Xavier Woods. You have guys like C.J. Henderson, J.C. Horn. In the DB, I kind of love the secondary, for being honest here. If they just put in some money on getting more veteran-type players or guys who have been proven maybe on more low-key teams, like Foye last year for Atlanta had 200 tackles, and then he signs with Jacksonville, and he's still very below the radar. If you just put some money into the defense, the defensive line or the linebacker position, or both ideally, the defense could propel you into the winning NFC South spot. And that gives you a home playoff game. And you just continue to build from there. So Carolina's in a really enticing spot. And then obviously offensively, we just talked about the quarterback position. But DJ Moore, I love DJ Moore. And I actually really love Terrace Marshall Jr., the second year guy out of LSU, the second round pick. I love him. And I hope that both of those 2 cats can continue to do what they're doing. Terrace was a little bit more low-key than DJ Moore. Keep in mind, it was very inconsistent, just offense, coaching staff, and quarterback position in general. So you kind of have to take all the offensive stats and defensive stats as a team you got to just take it with a grain of salt, really, if you get down to it. But this huge hole I have with Carolina, and I'm sure Panthers fans would agree with this, is the tight end position. This year, Ian Thomas, 197 yards. That was the highest, as far as the tight end core goes. It's the highest receiving yards on the season for a tight end for Carolina. That doesn't work for me. That's like 10 yards per game. That just simply doesn't work for me. The good news is, not only in this year's NFL draft and even in free agency, there are always studs. There are always low-key guys who are ready, licking their chops at an opportunity like this to be tight end one. You know, whether it's the 3rd round, 4th round, 5th round, what have you, or free agency, get them on a bargain. There's always tight ends that are just slept on, low-key out there that are ready. They're licking their chops at an opportunity like this. So that's just kind of the offseason broadly. Let me know what you guys are thinking about it. I'll continue to cover the Carolina Panthers, so be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, but most importantly, let me know what you guys are thinking about this offseason. Peace.